Welcome, and let your shoulders soften as we take a quiet journey together across a pale red world where the wind is thin and the horizon seems to rest in slow motion. Tonight, we will drift through the languid task of terraforming Mars and the long, patient waiting it would take for a breath of air to be safe and sweet on your lips. If you enjoy gentle science while you drift off, please like this video, subscribe for more, and feel free to let our sleep playlist in the description play quietly in the background as you settle in. What city country are you watching from right now? Imagine yourself standing in a shallow valley, the ground a soft carpet of fine rust-colored dust beneath your boots. The light is peach-tinted, filtered by a sky with a whisper of haze. You can almost hear the silence, a hush that is only interrupted by the hushed sigh of a distant breeze tracing the edges of ancient rocks. The sun hangs smaller than you are used to, a calm disk that gives its warmth gently and sparingly. You draw an imaginary breath, and you remember why your helmet is there, cool against your cheek, protective and familiar. The air outside is thin, mostly carbon dioxide, a fragile envelope at less than 1% of the pressure your body finds comfortable. On Mars, the first step toward a new sky would be to give that fragile envelope a gentle, steady lift. Terraforming, in its most careful telling, is not an act of conquest, but an act of waiting, of coaxing, of tending. You imagine vast mirrors in orbit, catching sunlight like reflective petals and redirecting it toward the poles. The mirrors do not shout, they shimmer silently, turning cold reservoirs of frozen carbon dioxide into gas that can expand and swirl into the atmosphere. You picture factories, not loud, but humming like distant refrigerators, shaping exotic greenhouse molecules that float into the air and hold warmth the way a blanket holds a sleeping body. This warmth would persuade buried ices to loosen, water to trickle and seep, and the air to thicken from a whisper to something that softly presses against your skin. The science moves at the speed of geologic clocks. Mars has only so much carbon dioxide locked in frost and rock, and careful studies suggest it is not enough to raise the air anywhere near Earth-like levels beside itself. But the gentle rhythm continues. There are other tools, slow shipments of icy comets nudged onto careful paths, the faint blue of their tails thinning across the sky as water and trapped gases arrive in feathery deliveries. Nitrogen, precious and rare on Mars, would be the quiet stabilizer, the filler that gives breath its volume while oxygen plays the leading but delicate part. Each shipment would be a story of patient aim and timing, an orchestra that rehearses not for a day but for centuries. With the air warming, dust would lift and settle in an unhurried cycle, painting the dawn with salmon-colored veils. Seasonal carbon dioxide would stop freezing out as much in winter, and the ground would exhale a little more each year. In sheltered basins, the faint glint of surface frost would become thin films of water that darken stones and then retreat over and over, teaching the terrain to remember moisture. Somewhere in a protected valley, you imagine a green smear beneath a transparent canopy, a nursery for hardy microbes and simple plants that sip light and release oxygen. Their work is gentle but relentless, a slow embroidery of O2 into an atmosphere that forgives hesitation and rewards patience. Breathable air is not only oxygen, it is also the quiet absence of danger. Oxygen would be bound at first by hungry minerals in the Martian soil. Iron-rich sands and dusty basalts would take up what the microbes make, turning their efforts into a slow, rust-colored accounting. Only after those sinks have had their fill does the balance begin to shift. You picture years becoming decades, decades merging into centuries, the oxygen curve inching upward like the tide at night, almost imperceptible, yet certain in its direction. On Earth, this took unimaginably long stretches of time. But on Mars, with attentive guidance and persistent energy, the timescales could compress to millennia. Still, millennia is a word that asks you to exhale slowly and feel the trust that comes with waiting. You find yourself strolling along the edge of a future reservoir, the water still and slightly green under a dim sky. The shore is made of smooth stones warmed by sunbeams that have traveled millions of kilometers to arrive here. High above, a shield of magnetic field generators might be humming, a soft, invisible umbrella placed near the planet's sunward point, turning charged particles aside with a graceful sweep. This is not a shield that clatters. It is a guard that whispers. It is there to help the thickened air remain, to keep hydrogen from running away too quickly, to balance losses with the steady work of outgassing and human-made replenishment. The system breathes in a rhythm that a sleeper would recognize, steady, patient, and calm. Deep under the surface, you imagine caverns softened by human hands, turned into gardens of artificial twilight. In these Terraform refuges, where the pressure and composition are managed with the precision of a lullaby, the air already feels safe. It carries the faint sweetness of damp soil, a hint of green, the mineral scent of stone. Water drips with a metronome's cadence. In such places, life could flourish, while the wider world outside keeps changing at its own untroubled pace. These are stepping stones in the long path to an open sky, places where people would learn the rhythms of a new planet and teach that planet to recognize the cadence of breath. Returning to the outdoors in imagination, the temperature nudges higher with each passing century. Seasons soften. What used to be harsh, dust-laden winds become more like seas that brush over tufts of pioneer vegetation kept safe under partial domes and windbreaks. The color palette of the land slowly gains hints of olive and sage near water, while reds and ochres remain faithful companions across the plains. In the distant background, the thought of a person eventually lifting a visor and tasting air that is their own is not a thrill, but a quiet assurance, like a promise traced softly into sand. How sleepy are you on a scale of 1-10? The technical milestones would arrive like the phases of a lunar cycle. First, the pressure slowly crosses the point where exposed skin no longer feels bitten by vacuum. Then, the air swells toward the levels that make movement easy and restful. A partial pressure of oxygen, carefully balanced with nitrogen and perhaps a touch of carbon dioxide for plants, becomes a target written into the slow bookkeeping of factories and biomes. Aiming for a fifth of the air to be oxygen would be elegant, but there are many gentle pathways and compromises. Closer to the soil, oxygen-rich boundary layers might form around clusters of well-tended vegetation, like halos you can only see by the way leaves lift. Along the way, unexpected gifts arrive. Dust storms that once felt daunting become part of the planet's circulatory system, spreading nutrients and lofting water ice crystals that sparkle like faint stars before settling. The greenhouse molecules we release slowly decompose under sunlight and must be renewed, like adding logs to a fire at intervals. This is work that suits a society comfortable with schedules that stretch beyond individual lives, where maintenance is a culture and stewardship is as natural as sleep. The gentle rhythm continues. Sensors listen to the air and earth, measuring pressure, temperature, and trace gases, then whisper numbers back to us so quietly that the data feels like a bedtime story. You might close your eyes and feel the timeline rush past like wind over a dune's crest, shaping and reshaping the planet.